Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is October 19, 2025. The time 4 p.m. PDT. And this is your host for the evening, Professor Hamamoto. Welcome, one and all. And I'm outfitted today in my Los Angeles Dodgers regalia because, as many of you know, they swept for the recent National League pennant race. Not only that, but game 4, my man, Ohtani Shohei, and I'm rocking his jersey. If you could see the back, it says Ohtani in kanji, and it is pronounced Ohtani, not Otani. Don't make an Irishman out of a yellow man. It's Ohtani, not Otani. Okay, got it? So he pitched the 4th game and the closing game, and he pitched 6 shutout innings. And in addition, and most of you know he goes both ways, which is already an anomaly in contemporary baseball. But he slammed 3 home runs at Dodger Stadium, which is sited on Chavez Ravine. And Chavez Ravine used to be the home, a barrio, to Mexicans or Mexican Americans before the O'Malley family, Walter O'Malley, went in there through eminent domain, took it over and moved the Mexicans out and moved the Los Angeles Dodgers in. And I was around at the time. I saw this on live television, local LA television, probably KTLA, a live broadcast or reportage of the Mexican people being forcibly ejected from their homes, carried out. So here we are in 2025, and I guess the moral of that story is that I'm in full support of the so-called ICE raids, contrary to the No Kings demo that fizzled out all over the country yesterday. I support ICE and the deportation raids of foreign nationals who have been admitted into the United States of America. And this includes lots of yellow people, by the way, not just the brown, but the yellow. So in honor of the history, the tortured history of Chavez Ravine, I would suggest that Dodger Stadium be left off limits for any ICE raids. Because if they did go there during the World Series and did a raid on the people that came to the ball game, gosh, 25%, maybe 40% of the stadium would be empty. So yes, the Los Angeles Dodgers are very popular amongst the Latino, which includes not just Mexicano, but Guatemalan, Dominican, Puerto Riqueño. All the brown people are down with the Dodgers, and that includes the yellow people. Why am I belaboring all this color? Brown, black, yellow, white. We're supposed to be in the post-racial age, supposedly, right? Well, as you're going to see in today's talk, the crimes committed by Ed Buck, or Edward Buck, and that's not his real name. He had it anglicized. Maybe it's sort of a tribute to his previous incarnation as a quote-unquote model. He did some modeling in Europe. I'm talking about Ed Buck. What's his real name? As if it may... Oh, David Buckmelter. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with David Buck? He had to create a new persona called Edward Buck. Sounds like a male porn star to me. but he is of the Euro-American, I think he's Jewish, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. All right. Because there is a very important historical, sociological, even anthropological, if you want to look at it from that angle, connection between the sort of mixed relationship between Jews, American Jews in specific, and we're talking mostly about leftist, progressive Jews who are affiliated primarily with the Democratic Party, and they are the ones who helped organize the No Kings, No Emperors demos, right? Recently. And they're the functionaries who are trying to, and the descendants, a lot of them of the Bolshevik generation of 3-4 generations ago, the immigrant generations who came to the US to destabilize the system, the economic system, the culture, society, the education, the ideological system, and they've succeeded up to this point. Alarmingly so. And I was on the front lines in higher education sounding the alarm against it because they had bought out a lot of yellow people and they tried to buy out me too to go along with the program. You know, it wasn't just these people like Gamal Moore, who we'll talk about them, these victims, or certain entertainers or influencers, quote unquote, who was shoveled money in order to present a certain ideological perspective favorable to that group that's in control. But they even try to compromise people like me who are, relatively speaking, inconsequential. All right. But I did have the power of publication, of knowledge, of information, of research at a fairly well-regarded institution of higher learning. And I'm fairly well known in the field in my particular specialty. So it's important for them to reach out to me and have Professor Hamamoto buy into the whole queer, gay, lesbian, transgender, post-humanist, really, agenda, because I'm interested, my research area is in media, popular culture, film, television, new media. I've been talking more recently about video games. All right, those are just, in brief, my bona fides. Now, where you, the casual viewer, you're not going to have any problems with my argument if you've been watching me for the last 5 years. But if you're just tuning in, and especially if you are a Black, Negro, colored person, whatever term you want to use, I've been going back to Negro lately on my own X accounts and YouTube, just like I'm reviving the term yellow for Asian America because that's the official bureaucratic governmental designation of people like me. And in Chinese, yellow is Huang. The yellow people, Huang De. I'm getting the pronunciation wrong. The Yellow Emperor, if you look at the Chinese classics, they talk about the mythical, historically rooted Yellow Emperor. Like in the I Ching, they're always talking about the Yellow Emperor, the superior man. It's part of my culture, my legacy here. And I don't want that to be stolen by being put in this category of a bunch of sellouts who today call themselves Asian Americans. That used to mean something, just like it used to mean something to refer to yourself as Black, if I may presume to say so, because obviously I am not Black, even though I did grow up in segregation of Los Angeles in the 1950s, cheek by jowl with Negro people and Mexicans and poor white trash hillbillies from the South. And we all came together in Los Angeles, our parents did, our fathers primarily, for work, for the to enjoy the post-war prosperity. Yes, there was a time when the American economy was really growing, and we were part of it. So I'm speaking from someone who is immersed in it, but may not necessarily have the racial authority to speak on the behalf of Negro or Black or colored people, and I don't presume to. All right, let me clarify that. But I am going to be privileging Black voices, Negro voices, colored voices in talking about the Ed Buck case. And I'll explain why. And by privilege, I mean that's just sort of academic jargon for prioritizing or putting forth perspectives that Black people themselves have, as opposed to people who are on the outside commenting, which is usually the case, right? Like, especially in my situation, the reason why I keep talking about yellow, Ohtani, Shohei hitting 3 home runs, all that other stuff, is because our voices, our perspectives have not been foregrounded, have not even been authorized. Let me give you an example. How many of these sports analysts, how many of these sports commentators that you see, whether it's on ESPN, TBS, MLB, whoever, how many of those experts on sports do you see are white or yellow heterosexual men? Zero. If they put one in, they're going to put some hot yellow chick in there. Right. And of course, she's going to be married to one of the white executives at NBC or MSNBC or whatever it is. Or they'll put Steven Seagal. Well, hey, listen, I'm a karate expert, so I can speak authoritatively on all sports excellence of the yellow people. And you can tell that that's not going to fly with me. You dig? So I'm not going to abandon the concept of race. I don't care what your pop-up pundits who are now pretending to be conservative have to say. Oh, we're beyond reality. Just look at people. We're all human beings. Okay, ideally, that would be nice. But we're seeing through the example of Ed Buck, who is a white man who killed, or at least was responsible. I have to be careful with the way I phrase it, because he was not accused of not even manslaughter, let alone murder, but he was a participant in the death of 2 young Black men. Well, one of them was in his 50s, but he specialized in young Black men that he got off the street, quite literally off the street. Some of them were homeless. And I'll use the politically incorrect term homeless instead of unhoused. When you jerkwads use the term unhoused, you're only highlighting what we all know. You're bringing more emphasis to it. And you don't give a shit about those people who are homeless. You're like Ed Buck. Ed fucking Buck. That's who you're like, because he's a Democratic Party liberal. He's a big baller in the Democratic Party circles. And right at this very moment, as you and me, we are talking about his career, his rise to the top, and his exploitation, his humiliation, his ritual abuse of young Black male homosexual bodies. He's sitting in jail right now doing a 30-year term. Now, maybe he'll be able to cop a plea like the Menendez brothers, like D. Shitty and Ghislaine Maxwell, anybody who's highly placed. They might let him stew for a while, his handlers, I mean, because he's got people behind him, Ed Buck does. He's only the tip of the iceberg. He is not the iceberg. All right, so you understand where I'm going with this. He targeted Black gay men in particular, just like Hollywood in general has a fetish for gay Black men, and they're foregrounding it. Why? Because as part of the post-human agenda, heterosexuality has been first stigmatized, made unpopular, and then genetically bred out of the human species. There's a larger end game in work here, but you start at the level of culture. And your Ed Buck types, those functionaries were the sort of the handlers on the street level of this process. Am I getting too abstract here? Tell me in the chat room. I'll slow it down and I'll try to break it down a little bit. And I'll show you some videos that'll help illustrate some of these concepts that might appear too nebulous, right? And I'm also hoping that those of you who want to pursue this topic further will be inspired to look at a lot of literature that I have conveniently assembled from my Patreons. I have them there, and there's a wide variety. These are all academic pieces. These are serious articles. All right, and I'm telling you that because this is what distinguishes me, this channel, the Professor Hamamoto channel, from the Papa Pundits. I put true crime in the title here today, but that doesn't mean I'm on the level of Nancy Grace or these other characters, these hybristophilic females who are getting so excited. I mean, their underpants get wet by talking about all them serial killers. They get so excited and they have these little wacky forensic psychologist females who are nutcases who go on there, provide expert comment. I'm not talking about that. That's really low. I mean, I'll watch it. Believe me, I'll watch it. But that's really low level entertainment. As I've stated before, I'm interested in understanding why this is going on so that we can craft a response to eliminate these problems or at least reduce them radically. And in order to do that, we have to get to the level of, as they say in sociology, sociological theory, as we get to the level of verstehen. It's a German term. It means more than understanding. It's intuiting. It's a simpatico. It's untranslatable. That's the only reason why I'm nerding out here and using the German term verstehen. And I do it to distinguish myself from the Nancy Graces, the ghouls of the world, who are and many here imitators who are legion now, who are exploiting true crime for clicks and pandering to the masses who love reading about Ted Bundy and Charles Manson, whoever else. And as I've shown you in previous talks, we were led up into this through the culture, the popular culture. Remember, I'm a media expert. I have the publications, the curriculum vitae to prove that. If I need to prove it to you, whoever you are as a skeptic, that's my field. All right. If you've seen my earlier pieces, I talked about Roger Corman, right? His low budget films, and I kind of question whether he was involved in sort of some nefarious types of film activity, which are more rumored than anything else in Hollywood and the general culture. And I'm not going to get any more specific than that. Right. He did go to the Philippines. He went overseas quite a bit to collaborate in these certain parts of the world that are known for filming unspeakable acts for small boutique audiences. Right. That's Roger Corman. And I tell you that because if you go to film school, oh, he's their god. Roger, he's a genius. He's made all these low budget movies, which are so meaningful. No, he's about going in to nurses' quarters and raping them and slashing to death, just like what happened with Richard Speck and the Filipina nurses that were killed in Chicago. I covered that story. I'm sure he was inspired by that and said, we're going to make a movie about it, put it out on the drive-in theaters around the country so that boys and girls together who are having makeout sessions can connect their passion, their love, their sexual expression with violence. Extreme, good old-fashioned American violence that was fed by the blood of the native people and other Europeans fighting, and the Chinamen who died up in Utah, up in Idaho, up in Utah Valley University, up in Brian Koberger land. That whole area was denuded of Chinamen. That's history, ladies and gentlemen. That's not me just making it up because Ohtani Shohei hit 3 home runs. I'm just trying to complete the history here. All right, so we're talking about getting back to Ed Buck, a Democratic Party functionary. I said he's mid-level. He's not like at a John Podesta or his brother level, like a shot caller level. He's like one of the street soldiers. They have them in every city and in towns too. They're starting to infiltrate rural America. They had a Southern strategy. I'm talking about the Bolshevik revolutionaries, cultural revolutionaries. But of course, they dominate the politics of all the major cities, including Los Angeles. That's why I'm wearing the LA regalia. That's another level of it. And I want to break that political block up. And I want to break that political block up all the way up to San Francisco and the state of California in general, and return the state of California and the United States of America to the American people. That's my long-range agenda. But in order to do that, I have to take these small steps and focus on miscreants, perverts like Edward Buck, David Buckmilter. Right. So who is he? Let's just take a quick look at a video that gives you an overview of one Ed Buck. Again, I want to encourage people who are watching this who have aspirations of writing, of doing journalism, an academic pursuit, whatever it is, expression, the research and writing and expression of these very important issues. I want to direct you to these videos here and the wealth of articles, which I'll be talking about in a moment here on my Patreon. And I want to take this time to thank all my Patreon supporters for allowing me the budget that allows me access to the books. All right, and I ordered already, and I'm probably going to get it any day now, the new posthumous book by Virginia Giuffre. How can I forget? I think I'm trying to repress some of these unpleasant memories, which go back, for me at least, years and years of following the trajectory of the case. But her book's coming out, and well, you probably know that there was a show of royal withdrawal of support for the British Prince Andrew in anticipation of this book coming. So I'm going to be getting that. I'm going to read it, go through it carefully, and then bring it back to you. So the point is that your patronage is allowing me to get these books and have them in my hand as soon as it drops. And I have some other material too that I'm really, really excited about sharing with you. Sometimes I wish I was on twice a week instead of only once, but as you know, I do really, really intensive deep dives for an entire week before presenting the talk to you on Sundays. So let's get into it. And I'm also trying to encourage you to go way beyond the way I can, the depth that I can take this. Because you know what? I checked it out at least a couple of days ago. It might have changed over the last couple of days. But there was not a single book on the Ed Buck case. And usually if it's a popular serial killer, right, one who's not being protected like Ed Buck, as I told you, he's a Democratic Party honcho, right? There's usually a book out on Amazon like within 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a week. It's usually a piece of garbage, but certainly within two years, you would expect something on Ed Buck to be out. So that tells me the people in the corporate-owned monopoly called publishing are squelching the story. But you and me, we know that we don't need those gatekeepers anymore, right? People like Virginia Giuffre have shown that if you do speak out, despite all the hardships that are involved, and she paid a heavy penalty for that, Virginia Giuffre did, the truth does manifest itself in positive action. Now, is it definitive forever solutions? I don't know, and probably not, but where would we be without truth tellers like her and others? And I've named them before. These are all my favorite writers and journalists who have been going at it for years and years and years now without any expectation that they're ever going to be heard, but they are being heard right now. And the case of Ed Buck's participation in the death of 2 black men and a third who almost died of an overdose. We're talking about methamphetamines here, ladies and gentlemen. And then those are the only 3 that were well known, documented. He had many, many more young black men come through his West Hollywood apartment where he would shoot them up forcibly with methamphetamine. And while that thought is in my mind, I was doing research right up to the showtime today, whether they're in the literature of sexual deviancy. And I have a lot of experience reading in this area, right? So-called psychopathology and deviancy. And I'm kind of wary about these terms, so that's why I'm using the quotation marks, but I'm quite familiar with it. But I could not find a term. Usually these medical terms are in Latin, and I'm appealing to you. If you know the term, write it down in the comments. You know, I don't need to hear some nut job telling me, well, it's not curriculum vitae, it's curriculum vitae. I speak English, motherfucker. You know, so don't pull that one on me. Don't pull that card on me. I'm a yellow man, but I'm a Native American speaker. You dig? But if you can tell me what the medical term for sexual fetish of injections, then you would be helping all of us who are trying to understand what's going on in this twisted imagination and behavior of Ed Buck, who would immobilize young black homosexual men and inject them with methamphetamine and other drugs. It was mostly meth. Crystal meth, I don't really know. But this is something that obviously, or maybe not obviously, this is something that's not within my personal experience. So I found research articles, medical or science articles in the journals saying that methamphetamine is used as a not just an aphrodisiac, but to intensify sexual pleasure. So that helps explain why Ed Buck and his partners too, because they, you know, it was forced on them, but they did have a lot of cooperative participation in the pleasure. It was, I won't say it's mutual. It wasn't back and forth. It was unequal, but they were there. Sometimes they would be overdosed, and a week later they would be back and be overdosed again on methamphetamine being injected. All right, but I'm not going to judge them for that. All right. I'm not going to disqualify the fact that they were victimized by Ed Buck, who had the crystal methamphetamine and other drugs. By the way, none of the literature that I came across, both the popular and academic literature, even asked the questions, where did he get all that crystal methamphetamine? Who was his supplier? Maybe he was the supplier. Maybe he was just someone who was dipping into his own inventory. I don't know. There's a lot of questions that remain to be answered. And I'm hoping that you out there who are embarking on a career writing true crime will tackle the case of Ed Buck. You better do a good job, though. Otherwise, you're just another wanker out there trying to make a buck out of people's misery. But there's room for growth and there's room for quality work. In fact, justice requires us to step forward with deeper levels of analysis so we don't have to listen to these true crime mavens who don't tell us anything. They're just listing crimes. They're just waiting for headlines to come across their desk. I'm talking about Harvey Levin and TMZ and all that garbage. And I watch it myself. Excuse me. But unlike these shows, the Professor Hamamoto's channel strives to understand the basis of this deviancy, of this ugliness, of this evil even. Where's it come from? There's multiple approaches. One second. I'm not used to speaking so early in the morning. Good. It's out of me. Thank you. Yeah, Ed Buck doesn't want me to speak, but I'll speak anyway. He's in jail, languishing away. He looks like a used up crack addict himself. He's a shell of his former self. This is how in part, how he got there. Let's take a look at this video.
Fetish for young black men and methamphetamines. He would often invite young men up to his West Hollywood apartment, where he would entice them into a drug-fueled session that sometimes lasted for days. On 2 separate occasions, these sessions ended in death. When a third surviving man agreed to cooperate with the police, the private life of a wealthy, politically connected predator would finally be exposed. Thanks for joining me for The Wicked and Cruel Crimes of Ed Buck. Beginning in 2011 through the end of 2019, Ed Buck used dating apps, escort services, and procurers to find a steady stream of homeless, drug-addicted, financially insecure, and otherwise vulnerable, often young black men, who he would supply drugs to or money in exchange for being filmed, while being injected with methamphetamines, sometimes against their will. Friends say that sometime in late 2016 or early 2017, Jamel Moore was approached by Ed Buck on an escort site. Friends say that Moore ignored Buck's advances, but that he was eventually persuaded by one of his other escort friends that the two of them should meet Buck at his apartment. The deal was that Moore wouldn't have to do anything but talk to Buck and he'd get $600. From everything I read and can gather, Jamel Moore didn't do intravenous drugs before he met Ed Buck. And from what I've read, Buck must have salivated at the prospect of having a virgin meth user in his hands. At some
And that pic is of Jamel Moore. His mother, she has a different last name, was quite aggressive in trying to get justice for her own son. Right. And this is one of the important points that we should keep in mind here is that justice was achieved not through the establishment, the DA's office, district attorney, or through even the local police, West Hollywood, or the sheriff's department in Los Angeles, but by everyday but extraordinary people from the community. And more specifically, the, the subset of that community were Black women, not just mothers, but also community activists, for lack of a better, the real ones, not the fake ones that go into, they live in the deep suburbs, and they went to prep school, and their parents are vice presidents of Bank of America, right? This is what I call the Black bourgeoisie. Not those people. The people who are the true community leaders are the ones who spearheaded the investigation, arrest, and eventually conviction of Ed Buck. And we'll talk more specifically about some of the principal individuals. One is Jasmine Canick, I believe her name is pronounced. She was not a blood relation of any of the victims, so far as I know, but she was a on-site community activist who had seen the exploitation of young Black men in Los Angeles area by well-to-do white guys like Ed Buck. She saw that just like I've seen the exploitation of younger women's from Cambodia or Laos or Vietnam or the Philippines. Used to be China, but China prosperity kicked in and they were less inclined to send their women overseas. And then I remember Japanese women were in this category as well in the 1950s. Right. So there's a power dynamic here that's in play. It's very similar. And the people who are in the community are observing it. But relative to the political establishment in Los Angeles, we're talking about specifically, that subset of Black women, real organic community leaders are disempowered. Instead, they swapped out the real down home organic heroes or heroines, if you prefer, of the African American, Black, colored, Negro community. They swapped them out for people like Karen Bass, the current mayor of Los Angeles. You've seen her, and she is part of the lesbian, progressive, leftist LA mafia. They have a Karen Bass in all the major cities, not just in California, but all over the country. And they're moving into the smaller towns as well, in traditional conservative areas of America, for the eventual takeover, consolidation and takeover. And Ed Buck is part of that system. He's an integral part of it. Right? Let me just get to the heart of the matter here. Ed Buck, and again, I did not read this in any of the court transcripts, the charging documents, the sentencing material, or journalistic reports or academic research papers. I did not read this, but Ed Buck, this is a Professor Hamamoto hypothesis, and it's not super surprising, but Ed Buck is a pass-through for huge sums of money that are being funneled through him. He's not the point of origin for all the money that was being given to Hillary Clinton. She's just one person. Let me give you some other names. Eric Garcetti was given some money through Ed Buck. He's usually described as a Democratic Party donor who got rich because he sold his company. That's the cover story. It's kind of like, Jeffrey Epstein was a financial genius, and he was the financial advisor to all these high net worth individuals, and he was able to, the whole story. He's a pass through himself, So think Jeffrey Epstein when you're looking at someone like Ed Buck, but on a smaller scale, right? And we can figure that there are Ed Bucks types, just as like there are Leslie Wexner types all over the country, all over the world, really. But they're all in smaller parts, operational fields, modeled after this whole influence peddling scheme, if you want to call it that. Just buying out the government, buying out, capturing the state, the judicial apparatus, the corporations, entire industry, because Ed Buck was very tight with the, quote, Hollywood entertainment industry. Who knows? He might have been operating as a procurer to some of these Hollywood moguls who have a taste for black young flesh. It's the black fetish, sexual fetish. It's heterosexual as well. I mean, that's one of the reasons why hip hop and rap, even though it's been dead for 30 years, why rap and hip hop was allowed to percolate to the top of the heap. Some of it's good, but most of it's garbage, and right now, it's pretty much exhausted itself. It's because of the fetishization of the black woman, the black man, the black body, sexual fetishization, right? And it's become like a totemic process for the rest of us: yellow, white, brown, other blacks. They think through their own powerlessness through the lens of what they're hearing in the form of so-called gangster rap or ho rap or ho hip hop, whatever it might be. But that regime is coming to a grinding stop. Jay-Z will be the next to fall, but it's not going to be just the black community, not just P. Diddy. David Geffen is also going to be falling by the wayside because, as I mentioned, I alluded to at least briefly last time, David Geffen, in his relationship with his black gay stud man, is analogous to what Ed Buck was doing with his stable of black gay men. I don't know what the second. I'm trying to find articles. I found a few of the dynamics. I can find it between the dynamics between American Jews and Black Americans, colored people, the Civil Rights era, going back to the colonial times of slavery, all the way to the present, right? The post-war period, King Records, Sid Nathan down in Cincinnati. He was a Jewish businessman who got local rural black people to record rhythm and blues on his label. He brought some hillbillies in who came to Cincinnati. They were lonesome for their own regional music. He created a new musical form. And there's many examples of this over and over. The Chess Records up in Chicago. Oh, so they have this historical, I'm talking about Jews and blacks, have this historical connection that goes back in the modern period, centuries. But you might be able to take it all the way back to Babylonian times. I don't know. That's something that we need collectively and individually to explore, this tortured relationship. All I know is that the relationship of using black people as a sort of frontman for Jewish empowerment or any other group is wrong. And it's exhausted itself. We've identified it. We've seen it. Just take a look at who's behind all this black canvas. People like Clive Davis. Come on. Tony Mottola. I think he might be of Italian ethnicity, but the connection of Italians and Sicilians to the music business and to the Jewish mafia. It's like this. They're like cousins. One is Catholic, the other Jew. And the people who are providing the labor for that are the black bodies, both female and male, from entertainment to sex to athletics, and to a certain degree, very small degree, intellectual labor. All right, there is your Judge Joe Brown types that are kind of brought to light. At one point, Judge Joe Brown was making $20 million a year on the Judge Joe Brown show. Maybe I should do an entire talk on the whole Judge Joe Brown phenomenon. He's a brilliant individual. He's got a very fascinating history. Educators and native too. He has Choctaw bloodline lineage in him. So anyway, I'm getting off topic here. It shows you how deep in the American psyche and history are these relationships, and it shows you how weird and almost pathological some of these issues are worked out through the sex. All right, now let me show again. No one seems to be caring about the Ed Buck case and his victims, Gamel Moore and Timothy Dean. I think he was around 55 years old, but he was a gay male. He fit that. And they were all in West Hollywood. For those of you who are not familiar with LA, West Hollywood is like the West Village, Greenwich Village, New York City, which used to be a gay enclave. Now it's probably too expensive. They moved up further north up to in the city to the meatpacking district. Now probably gays are more distributed out through the whole city, but in LA, West Hollywood, in the post-war period, became associated with being a gay enclave. Kind of like the Castro in San Francisco, that was associated with being a gay enclave. Gay rights, Harvey Milk, the city councilman, and that whole story. He became a hero, gay icon, just like the birthplace of the gay rights movement supposedly took place in the Village, right? That's Boys Town. That's West LA. And our friend Ed Buck, that's where he lived in rent-controlled. He had a lot of money. He didn't need a rent control, but he lived in a rent-controlled apartment where he'd bring all these black gay men for his own delectation. And the only people that seem to be interested are the black women, community members, and black filmmakers, documentarians. I'll show you I guess it's a trailer of a full-length documentary called Gamel and Timothy, I believe. You can find it on YouTube. I found it. Let's take a look at it. This needs to be researched, and it needs to be connected to the larger system of democratic control and corruption of the American Republic. It begins at a very elemental, deviant level of these sexual practices, injecting black men with methamphetamine. That sounds like our friend Dahmer, Jeffrey Dahmer. By the way, he also would cruise the gay bars, and he would select men of color. He's got this one guy who's a Cambodian refugee, Symphony, I guess his name was, a Native American kid. He, 17, 8, that's what I mean by kid. And black men, take them to his house. He would drug them. He would inject them. He would inject them with bleach. He wanted to make them into his own humanoid army or followers. Jeffrey Dahmer, he was a mind-controlled character for sure. I don't have time to go in there, but there's some parallels there. So let's take a look at this one documentary called Gamel and Timothy. It's a trailer, I believe.
I don't understand how in California, Los Angeles, West Hollywood, a serial killer on the streets and just nothing was done.
Two African-American gay men took their last breaths in the West Hollywood home of a wealthy Democratic donor.
Ed Buck is well known in West Hollywood, battling City Hall for causes near and dear to his heart and spending big bucks on candidates who support his views.
Gamel Moore and Timothy Dean both died of overdoses in Buck's West Hollywood apartment in the last couple years.
The LA County Sheriff's Department says they have found no suspicious circumstances of foul play.
My son did not OD, he was murdered.
Ed Buck, he didn't care about Tim. He didn't care about Jamel.
Jamil stated, I honestly don't know what to do. I become addicted to drugs, and the worst one at that. Ed Buck is the one to thank. He gave me my first injection of crystal sick meth.
Timothy explained a lot up here on the hill when we would hike about the temptation of all the money that Ed would offer just to go and get high with them.
It's really men in power who get away with it.
We're going to have a third one and a fourth one if we don't stop this man.
A loud call for DA Jackie Lacey to prosecute Buck for murder.
Do you think your political influence is keeping you a free man now, sir?
Tim was a really special guy, and I really didn't get to see the 360 view of him until he passed.
Jamil, we are his extended family, and we do want to make sure that this never happens again.
Jamil and Timothy, we realized how many lives those two individuals touched. And had their life not been as precious as it was to so many people, we probably wouldn't be here.
Okay, that's worth checking out if you want to research a worthy topic. If this is a topic that Nancy Grace is not going to go near. Why? It's about homeless gay black men in Los Angeles, and I don't know where she's feeling. I think she is in LA. All these characters are really fearful of offending the entertainment executives, and they all work for larger companies anyway. I'm trying to give you an explanation why this case has been suppressed. All the way from the Democratic Party, and I told you before, the Democratic Party, to a certain point in the 60s, was fused with the Los Angeles entertainment mafia, negotiated by one of their head mafia figures, Lou Wasserman of MCA, which later, most people know as Universal City Amusement Park, but it was a mafia-run organization going back to Dr. Jules Stein in Chicago, who was a Al Capone affiliate. Are you seeing the historical continuities here? And who did they exploit all the way back to the music and entertainment, Broadway, vaudeville, back in the 1920s and 30s? It was black talent, musicians, bands. And they were able to also take away the policy, stealing from the black gangsters of Chicago. They muscled them out. It was an extortion racket. Just like Charlie Kirk was muscled out of Turning Point USA. That I'm trying to say, it is a old-fashioned extortion rub out. We want your shit. We're going to take it. We're going to give you the offer you can't refuse. If you do refuse it, we have ways of setting up a whole confusing scenario to get rid of you. No one's going to be able to figure it out. We look at JFK. Decades after, people are still scratching their head. What the hell went down on November 22nd, 1963, out in Dealey Plaza? So this is child's play for us. We'll do it anyway. This is the world that your creatures like Ed Buck are operating. And they're putting money in the hands of people who are going to help them in Congress. Let me give you some familiar names. Ted Lieu. He's a Democratic Party functionary out of L.A. Ted Lieu is getting money through Ed Buck. Past, I have a sum of money, $19,400. Not a lot of money. That's just the official donation. I'm suspecting, and I'm not accusing anybody, I'm suspecting that he was getting lubricated at a much higher level. And he is in Congress. You see, and he's the yellow guy who's always spouting the Democratic Party line. And he's as queer as a $3 bill. He's part of the queer mafia of Los Angeles. He's one of their frontmen. They have to put a token yellow up there, and it happens to be Ted Lieu. And here's another name for you of a recipient of the largest of our friend Ed Buck, and it's coming through higher level people, I'm sure. Adam Schiff of L.A., Los Angeles. Adam Shifty Schiff. It says the official donation from Ed Buck was $2,700. That's nothing. That's peanuts. That's the official sum that they listed. But he's on the payroll. And then there's a John J. Duran. He was the West Hollywood mayor during the time of the cover-up of Ed Buck. He got $12,500 from Ed Buck. That's why he kept conveniently silenced. And I believe he's Latino. So it's equal opportunity graft here. You got guys like Ed Buck will give some money to a Chinaman. They'll give some to a Mexicano, a Mexican, a brown guy, black, wherever it's going to be paying off for him. So he can own that whole system. So that's how important Ed Buck is, and that's why you were hearing nothing about him in even so-called true crime reportage. Because those channels are owned by the same people who run Ed Buck. Are you getting the idea now? But I've also told you that there's ways to overcome the blockade, right? The barriers that have been erected for the truth. We're overcoming right at this very moment, unless the plug is pulled on Professor Hamamoto. But you're watching it live, so you're getting it here. Hopefully it'll stay up for, this piece will stay up for others who are going to run this show. Okay, so let's continue with another documentary piece. This one's called Beyond Ed Buck. And if you're learning for the first time by Ed Buck, congratulations, you're on your own. You will not be able to unsee it. From this day on, the name Ed Buck is going to be right up there with P. Diddy, with Jeffrey Epstein, with Leslie Wexner, with Hillary Clinton, with John Podesta. You're going to immediately think about Ed Buck as being part of that octopus. Here we go. All right, you can check that one. I think it requires a subscription to a channel, which I'm unwilling to do. But the point is that black filmmakers and journalists themselves are filling in the vacuum where the so-called indie media, as well as academic, there's not going to be any academic research because that's all locked up by the Ed Buck type people. They're not going to be doing research that puts these leftist criminals in a bad light, especially when they pretend to be liking black people and minorities like Orientals and immigrants. They don't give a rat's ass for any of these people. They're playing the empathy card on us to guilt trip us, but you know what? That's not working anymore. That's why No Emperor's demonstration yesterday was a big fizzle for all of those people. They're laughable. They're clowns. And they're beginning to understand that they're being played themselves, being used. Okay. And that includes for synthetic groups like Black Lives Matter. Remember them? As this article is an academic article. I'll put it on my Patreon. It's called, If It Didn't Hurt So Bad, I'd Kill Myself, but I'll let Ed Buck do it for now. This is the words in a journal of Gamel Moore, that you saw his picture and you saw his mother there. He was a journaler himself. Again, the power of writing. And his mother found it, and she released this information, and he wrote comments like this. They were able to help us reconstruct the crime, the nature of the crime, and how Gamel Moore, how he was experiencing it as a victim. So anyway, but it's by an individual by the name of Terrence Wooten. And he says that Black Lives Matter, even though it was founded, and I think it was a front also of these same groups that are using Antifa and all the other sort, they're pass-throughs for these larger financing entities. People usually throw out the name George Soros or the Soros Foundation or Tides Foundation or Arabella. Yeah, there's a bunch of them out there, and they put their money in so-called Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is this guy here who's also black and gay, academic, said that Antifa was founded by two lesbians, black women, lesbians, but they had nothing to say about the killing of Gamil Moore or Timothy Dean, the older man of the two, as well as the systematic drugging of other men who went on the record when it came to the indictment and the trial and the conviction and the sentencing of Ed Buck. These people in Black Lives Matter, or even the Me Too movement, so-called, had nothing to say about this. Why? Because Ed Buck stands at the core of the system. The financial, the entertainment, the judiciary, and the political system. You notice there was a black woman who was the DA in Los Angeles who said it was just accidental death. Ed Buck had nothing to do with it. She was a member of what I usually refer to as the black bourgeoisie that had been set up by people like Ed Buck to hold elective office, like Karen Bass. And one of the people in there was, I forgot her name, but they put as the district attorney a Latino. His name was George Gascon. And as I told you, LA is divided up between frontmen who are either Latino or black. And there's a couple of yellows in there. There's, what's her name from? She's from Monterey Park. She's a Maoist. I forgot her name. Her name. She's a fixture at UCLA, Asian American Studies, that got elected. But she's there. She's an operation. But mostly it's either black or Mexican, Latino, run by the Jewish power bloc in Los Angeles. The West Side liberals, the ones that go to rent-controlled apartments, Hollywood, West Hollywood, set up shop in Boys Town, and bring in young black men for their own sexual predation. That's Ed Buck. You got it? And I'm trying to find some kind of theological or religious background for the exploitation of black men by Jews. I couldn't find it. It's anti-Talmudic, I think. In fact, homosexuality, because I watch videos of Orthodox rabbis giving lectures. That's how I'm into it. I don't watch the so-called Reform rabbis because that's like listening to some sociology professor. Reform Judaism is bankrupt. Orthodox Judaism, yeah, I can handle that. That's okay. Here's what a rabbi has to say about just gay relationships in general. It's not allowed, right? So when you see a woman who calls herself a rabbi wearing a kippah and the shawl and all that, she's not a rabbi. She's a reform person. She's like your woman studies professor who now has the bully pulpit. She's taken over. So if you want to look at Judaism, look at the ultra-Orthodox and the Orthodox. I mean, Judaism, needless to say, has a diversity of political approaches and spectra. But here's one individual laying it out. Don't take my word for it. Here is a rabbi. His name's Rabbi Angel. How appropriate.
Hi, this is Rabbi Mark Angel at the Institute for Jewish Ideas and Ideals, jewishideas.org. We're very happy to welcome you to this YouTube program. The Institute stands for an intellectually vibrant, compassionate, and inclusive Orthodox Judaism, and we welcome your involvement. The question that was raised today is an interesting one, obviously very current. Namely, what is the status of gay marriage within the Orthodox world? How do we as Orthodox Jews deal with this phenomenon and the question that is obviously quite a burning issue within the United States and beyond? Well, there are actually three things I'd like to say about this. Number one, the Torah offers a clear and stark prohibition of homosexuality for males, and therefore it's fairly clear that within the halachic framework, there is no way in the world to condone or justify homosexual marriage. So that's the easy part. Then we come to the second part. And the second part is, even though the Torah does indeed forbid homosexuality, and homosexual marriages certainly cannot be accepted within the Orthodox world, nonetheless, we should look at this a bit more carefully. For example, the Torah, our Jewish halacha, does not permit marriages between Jews and non-Jews. It's not recognized that a marriage even took place. If a Jewish person marries a non-Jewish person, they can have a civil ceremony, they could have a party, they could call themselves Mr. and Mrs., but as far as the halacha is concerned, nothing has happened. It's a violation of the Torah, they're not following the rules, but the marriage simply has no status at all. If they were to break this marriage off, they would not require a get, they would not require a religious divorce. I would say that similarly, if the civil society decides that they want to allow homosexuals to marry, that's a civil decision, a secular decision, not a religious decision. Because as far as halakha is concerned, nothing at all has happened. We don't recognize such a marriage. We don't condone such a marriage. It's simply outside the purview of halakha. It would be pretty much the same thing as if a Jewish person married a non-Jewish person, even though that couple might have civil status as married. As far as halakha is concerned, there's no status whatsoever. They're just two individuals. The third thing I'd like to comment is this. Homosexuality is a complicated issue. It was understood one way in ancient times. It's understood in a different way now. As we learn more and more through the psychological, medical issues, we come to the conclusion that it's kind of hardwired in certain people, this tendency, and it's not really a matter of pure free choice. It's really the way they are created. And it's complicated from a halachic, theological, moral point of view to know exactly how to deal with this problem within halakha, within humanity. However, without going into all those details, we can say the following thing. Homosexual human beings are human beings. They're entitled to all of the same respect and courtesy that every other human being is. If such individuals come to join our synagogues, they should be accepted as members. They should be participating in the synagogue, the same as any other member of the congregation. We don't ask what people's sexual orientation is when they join the synagogue. We don't ask their level of observance. We simply want to know that they sincerely want to be part of our community. As long as they join the synagogue as individuals, that's fine. They should be accepted warmly and kindly, and that's the proper way to treat all Jewish people and all human beings in general. If, however, they want to join the synagogue and make an issue of their homosexuality and make it a public issue, then this would be a very problematic from the Orthodox point of view. We cannot condone an openly gay couple as though they are a married couple in an Orthodox synagogue any more than we could condone an intermarried couple, or any more than we would condone someone who said we are in favor of violating the Sabbath in public. If people do something on the private, that's their business. But if they make a public issue of it and say, I'm joining the congregation on this condition that you accept this from me, that's something that's not fair to demand of the congregation. So, long and short of it, there is no status of marriage at all, as far as halakha is concerned, if there's such a thing as a homosexual union. It can never be considered a marriage under any circumstances. Number two, it would be, I think, analogous to a situation of a secular issue of an intermarriage, where a couple gets married in a manner that's not in conformity with halakha, but nevertheless, on the civil society level, it is accepted.
Okay, Rabbi Angel summarizes the Orthodox perspective on it. So obviously someone like a David Geffen, which again, I drew parallels between Geffen's relationship with a black gay man. I think his name is, Livingston? Dave, is it David or something? David Armstrong. Sorry, I'm get the names mixed up. He also goes by another name. David Armstrong marriage between David Geffen, and they're supposed to be divorcing, is not recognized within Judaism. So what that means is that people like Geffen, who are calling the shots, or like Ed Buck, right, have turned away from God, so to speak, and from his religion. Maybe they, I don't know if they're even considered Jews anymore. So we'd have to ask the rabbi on that, but that's really not my call. I'm just trying to understand it from the perspective of their own communities there. But what I do see, though, is that Black gaydom is being aggressively promoted within the American Black community, to a certain degree, not on the same level of intensity as for the case of Negro people, but we see that same approach being taken for the yellow people, the yellow males. As I told you before, all the yellow male actors that I know, that I have interviewed, talked with, been on panels with, every single one of them is gay. Is that a coincidence? No, it's because they all ran through people like Ed Buck in order to get the job. From Daniel Day Kim on Lost to Jason Scott Lee, who did the Bruce, all those characters, this is what they're paying for. The people who run the culture society, the political transhumanist society. So they want to make sure that all the different groups are queered so they don't reproduce and they diminish the role of the man, the male. And I was brought in by the Annenberg School of Communications at USC by a guy named Larry Gross. My job as an expert in media, Asian American media, that's why I don't use the term anymore, was to help promote that agenda by queering yellow men and lesbianizing yellow women so that they don't combine together in holy matrimony and can't reproduce and don't reproduce. Of course, there's some that they'll cherry pick and they'll hand them over to Mark Zuckerberg, Priscilla Chan, Dr. Priscilla Chan, people like that. Or Amy Chua, they'll cherry pick her. Her father was a prominent physicist, electrical engineer. They'll cherry pick her and match her up with Jed Rubenfeld. I did a whole talk on them, right? They were at Yale University. What were they doing? They were holding these little very intimate soirees with their disciples. And they were sanctioned by the university for improprieties, let's say. I have all the proceedings and the documents were put on public. I have all that information. So I'm not just telling you this. And one of their students was J.D. Vance. Okay. So you see how deep this goes and how the network functions. Ed Buck is not a one-off. So let me just give you an example of how the gay Black male is being promoted by hiring certain directors, certain writers, and of course the actors, that's pretty obvious, but the behind the scenes talent to promote the delectable Black bodies ready and ripe for the picking of Ed Buck. Here we go.
Couples in Hollywood aren't just photogenic proof of love wins. They're architects of a more honest industry. One where a leading man can thank his husband without a PR fire drill, and where a comedy legend can build a bilingual family and a masterful hour of stand-up. Here's a no-fuss, star-studded guide to Black gay love stories that actually move the culture. Before we get into the video, please subscribe to the channel. Number 1, Jussie Smollett and Jabari Red. Jussie Smollett, once a breakout star on Empire, has had one of the most roller coaster careers in Hollywood. But his relationship with singer-songwriter Jabari Red has been a steady bright spot. The two have been linked for years, sharing moments that reflect deep connection and mutual support. Jabari, an artist with a soulful sound, complements Jussie's creative energy, and their chemistry has been
Well, as you know, Jussie Smollett has been reduced to a punchline. And on and on. And there they go into some lesbian couples. This is all professionally produced nudging of the culture into Black homosexuality And most of you are aware that within the mainstream black church, the Baptist church, the Orthodox church, not Greek Orthodox or Eastern Orthodox, but traditional church, these type liaisons are frowned upon, right? Because they understand what's being done to the community from externally and from within with collaborators within. So there's that tension going on right now. And Hollywood's losing. And Hollywood will lose. Ed Buck is in jail right now. Harvey Weinstein is in jail right now. All these people are being rolled up right now because the American public expressed the will. Our writers, our journalists, our filmmakers, our public intellectuals has given the great refusal to the whole gay machinery of Ed Buck and Hillary Clinton and Barack, Mr. Down Low Obama, and his husband, Michelle, and all those characters. We know that's a big joke that they're trying to pull on us, and we're not biting it anymore. I mean, let's listen to brother Dave Chappelle.
After the show, I saw him backstage. He was like, yo, what's up, man? I'm like, oh, shit, what's going on? And he had his buddy with him. He goes, Dave, I want you to meet Manuel. Manuel's my fiance. We're in New York getting married because it's legal here. I said, well, gracias. And he went to go get some drinks. And then my buddy looked at me. He was like, so, Dave, what do you think? And I started mumbling again. You gay, nigga, you know, you just gay. He said, yeah, I'm a little nervous about getting married, man. It's a big step. I said, yeah, it is. It's a big step. He said, well, you've been married for a while. You got any advice for us? No, I'm married to a woman. Sorry about that. And he corrected me. He said, no, you married the person that you love. So it's essentially the same. I said, you know, man, the problem with that statement is that it makes the assumption that I love her. But you guys lighten the fuck up. Of course I love my wife. She laughs at this shit. As a matter of fact, she eats and spends this shit. You know what I told him? I told him, I said, you know what you should do, man? First of all, you shouldn't do it. I'm talking about being legally married. It's not that you're gay as much as just legal marriage is a fucking diabolical leverage game in the United States. I'm just being honest. Devoid of religious significance or the idea of love, marriage is nothing but an awful contract that you shouldn't sign. I'm just being real. Because you start out loving each other, and then like 2 years later, you're just building a case against one another for a hypothetical court date that may or may not ever happen.
Wow. David Geffen is finding out the truth of that statement right there. We can always depend on the comedians to tell us the truth, right? So let's then conclude with just a snippet of an excellent documentary that I was able to obtain. It's let's see here. I think it's just the trailer part. And I'm sorry, it's Shattering the Silence. I'm sorry here. No, this is not the trailer. This is a true crime documentary done by a black person. So let's take a look at it. And I'll include some of these on my Patreon, or I'll put some links in there, because this whole topic of Ed Buck and what he represents needs to really hit the zeitgeist here. We can't depend on Nancy Grace to do all the heavy lifting for us, because she's a sensationalist. She's been on the scene same with Harvey Levin, so long. They've debased the whole discussion. Here we go.
Welcome to West Hollywood, where the women are strong and the men are pretty.
For this area of West Hollywood has become the mecca of the homosexual community. And one of the reasons gay men give for having come here is that they feel more comfortable.
Two African-American gay men took their last breaths in the West Hollywood home of a wealthy Democratic donor.
Ed Buck is well known in West Hollywood, battling City Hall for causes near and dear to his heart and spending big bucks on candidates who support his views.
Jamel Moore and Timothy Dean both died of overdoses in Buck's West Hollywood apartment in the last couple years.
The LA County Sheriff's Department says they have found no suspicious circumstances of foul play.
We have a lot of victims who have came forward. Ed Buck needs to be stopped.
A loud call for DA Jackie Lacey to prosecute Buck for murder.
That's your cake. Put the damn candles out. What are you gonna do? You are not gonna pour a cup of water on that cake. What is going on?
Jamil was a 26-year-old young son, brother, friend, trying to maneuver through life.
After Jamel was gone, I didn't at all think that it was going to be swept under the rug like that. It was a surreal realization of how invaluable my life as a Black gay man was.
We are his extended family. My love for Jamil will be endless, and we do want to make sure that this never happens again.
Oh, wait a minute. I gotta get you.
One thing about him, he would step up to the plate when needed. You can call and tell him what you need, A, B, C, D, E, and he'll follow to the note.
He was always looking out for people. Tim was a really special guy, and I really didn't get to see the 360 view of him until he passed.
Jamil and Timothy had never crossed paths with each other. Coming together, we realized how many lives those two individuals touched. And had their life not been as precious as it was to so many people, we probably wouldn't be here.
Well, that's the opening to that documentary. I haven't watched all of it. I've seen bits and pieces of it. It's I think it's almost like 90 minutes or something, but it is available on TubeView. You can find it. I recommend it. And again, this is an example of journalists from these communities, in this case, the African American or the Black community, who are representing their own story rather than allowing allow Ed Buck and his cohort to turn it into a debased Netflix series, something along those lines, right? So that's the Ed Buck story. In a nutshell, I learned quite a bit about something called chemsex. That's a practice which apparently, from the literature I came across, is acknowledged and accepted by the so-called gay community. At least the material I said, this is a reality of male sex. They like to take methamphetamine and poppers and all the other. That's part of their lifestyle choices. I don't agree with that, but I'm just telling you that this is the way they're trying to, the gay lobby is trying to rationalize it. Look under in your search chemsex. It's a term that I had never heard before. I also got to learn about the erotics of methamphetamine and why crystal methamphetamine is such a potent drug. Right. And most of all, I'm learning that people at the highest or the higher levels of the political establishment are administering this whole system. And there you have Ed Buck. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will leave you until next week. I think I'm going to probably talk about a little bit more about the LA mob. Talk about Sidney Korshak, the super mob lawyer. I got it thanks to my Patreon people. I was able to get a fairly rare, difficult to obtain, let's say, book called Super Mob about Sidney Korshak, and talk about how Korshak ripped off my people in LA. That is, Americans of Japanese descent during World War II and afterwards, and stole our shit and handed it over to the Pritzker family, who's associated with the Hyatt hotel chain. Well, the original Hyatt hotels were Japanese American owned. They were confiscated by Sidney Korshak and handed over to that fat fuck, J.B. Pritzker, who's the governor of Illinois. That guy. The guy who's parading around and preening like he's Mr. Social Justice right now, J.B. Pritzker, he's a thief. He's the latest edition of a generations-long criminal syndicate called the Pritzkers. So that'll be next Sunday. I'm prepping for it already. I got my pristine copy of Super Mob. Thank you, Patreon people. And I'm just telling you this so that you will subscribe and not miss next Sunday's show, because I'm going to build on Roger Corman, all these characters, the real Hollywood, your Ed Bucks, those characters. We all know about, Brahma and Hillary Clinton, all that. I'm looking at the foot soldiers that keeps this machinery going. But it also has the salutary influence of showing that community support and grassroots activism does work. I know it's kind of demoralizing when you see all these characters walk time and time again. But in the case of Ed Buck, justice was done. And it will continue to move in that direction if we, the people, have anything to say about it. And we do. We have a lot to say about it. And we'll be saying a lot more with your assistance. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Peace out. Have a wonderful week to come. Bye.